In this video, I am going to talk about the novel Siddhartha by Herman Hesse. This is a novel that had a profound impact on the way I see life in general. The protagonist of this story, Siddhartha, is a young man who is living in ancient India, belonging to a rich family. Though living a life of comfort, Siddhartha is dissatisfied with his life and he wants to move out of his parents' home in search of meaning. So he tells this to his parents, and his father vehemently disagrees with him. His father says that upon his passing away, Siddhartha will inherit all the family wealth, also the status and titles of the family. That will be more than enough for Siddhartha to make a life for himself. So his parents beg him not to leave. But Siddhartha had already made up his mind. Siddhartha had a friend named Govinda who also shared this sentiment of wanting to leave home. So one day, both of them left their village and embarked on this journey to find meaning in life. As customary in that age in India, there were philosophers and ascetics who had renounced normal ordinary life in search of enlightenment and spirituality. They spent their days meditating and being engaged in spiritual affairs. So Siddhartha and Govinda went to several of these philosophers and learned meditation and spirituality from them. But in the end, they were never satisfied with any of them. So they kept on wandering. During one of their wanderings, they stumbled on the monastery of Gautama Buddha. In that time period, Gautama Buddha was renowned as an enlightened philosopher. So they sat and listened to one of his sermons. At the end of the sermon, both of them were impressed, and Govinda told Siddhartha how Buddha is wiser than all the other teachers they have ever gone to, and they should stay with the Buddha and learn about life. Then Siddhartha said to Govinda, I know that you are going to stay with the Buddha, but I am not, and this is where we go our separate ways. Govinda was heartbroken. He asked Siddhartha, but don't you agree that Buddha is wiser than any of these teachers we have ever gone to? Why don't you want to stay with the Buddha? Then Siddhartha replied, I don't deny that Buddha is enlightened. I don't deny that Buddha is wiser than any of the people we have ever met in our life. But the problem is Buddha had gained that wisdom and enlightenment through his own experiences in life. And wisdom is not something you can teach to another person. You can teach someone knowledge, but never wisdom. Wisdom is something you acquire when you go out into life and you do things and you fail and you learn from those experiences. So, I will not stay with the Buddha. I will go out into the world and I will find my own way. So, just like that, the two friends go separate ways. While walking away from this monastery, Siddhartha finds a river, and there he finds an old man named Vasudeva who is carrying people across the river in his boat for a small sum. Siddhartha, while on the boat crossing the river with Vasudeva, makes him a proposal. If you are ever looking for work, you can always come to me and work with me as a boatsman. So Siddhartha pays Vasudeva and he gets out of the boat. In the distance, he sees a city, so he walks towards the city. There in the city, his eyes stumble upon this gorgeous woman who is enjoying the morning sun. He thinks to himself, all these years, these philosophers have told him that he needed to renounce worldly life to gain happiness and enlightenment. But what if enlightenment is found in the abundance of worldly pleasures? He wonders if a beautiful woman like this can be the source of happiness in life. So one day, Siddhartha went and introduced himself to this woman, and she introduced herself as Kamala. Eventually, Siddhartha stated that he is romantically interested in her. She looked at Siddhartha from head to toe. He was a disheveled, dirty man wearing rags. But she saw this glimpse of intelligence in his eyes. Kamala said, "There are rich and powerful men in this city who are interested in me. Why should I choose someone like you who is poor over them?" And then she makes this offer to Siddhartha. "I will introduce you to one of my friends called Kamaswami, who is a businessman. You can work under him as an apprentice. If you can prove to me that you can be successful in this real life as well, then I will consider this offer." So like that, Siddhartha started working with Kamaswami on business. The experience and the skills he had learned in his time during meditation, such as being focused and disciplined, helped him become successful in business as well. And in a very short amount of time, he became a wealthy man. And eventually, Kamala fell in love with him and they got into a relationship and moved in together. Some time went like this, but eventually Siddhartha felt that he is not still satisfied with life and he felt trapped. More and more he started becoming reckless in the business and he started gambling away money. Kamala realized this and she understood that Siddhartha doesn't really belong in this type of life, and she knew that he would eventually go away. Kamala was keeping this bird in a cage, and one day when she woke up, Siddhartha had gone. So she took this bird from the cage and released her as symbolism of Siddhartha going away, being a caged bird before. So Siddhartha didn't know where to go, but he remembered the offer made by Vasudeva, the ferryman, long time ago at the river. So he started walking towards the river and he found that Vasudeva was still there. And after that, he started working with Vasudeva, taking people across the river for a small amount of money. And they lived a poor, frugal existence, living in a hut nearby, and time passed. Unknowing to Siddhartha, Kamala was pregnant with his child when he left. And the child was a boy, and Kamala raised the child on her own. After this time period, Kamala became a devout follower of the Gautama Buddha and changed her lifestyle. So one day she got to know that Gautama Buddha was dying and she wanted to see him one last time. So she took her son and embarked on this journey to where the Buddha was. But along the way, she got bitten by a snake and fell unconscious on the road. And this child, being helpless, was crying besides his mother. Coincidentally, this happened closer to where Vasudeva and Siddhartha was. So they went to see what the commotion was. And Siddhartha realized that it was Kamala. But they were already late at that point and she had already died. And then Siddhartha saw this child who was crying on the side of the road and he realizes that it's his son. So he took the child to the hut he was sharing with Vasudeva. The child didn't really like it at all. And Vasudeva explained to Siddhartha how this child is used to a luxurious life, being catered by servants. So you should better give this child back to the household so he can continue to live that lifestyle. But at that point, Siddhartha had grown an attachment with the child, so he refused to let the child go. So he raised the child in this hut, and over time, the child grew to resent him for keeping him away from his previous life. When the child was 16 years old, he ran away from this hut, leaving a note saying how much he hates his father and that he is running away. So again, Siddhartha pursued his son and found that the son had stolen their boat and gone across the river. But at that moment, Siddhartha realizes something. He had left his parents all those years ago and he never went back to see them, and presumably they can be dead by now. And his parents didn't want him to go. In a similar fashion, his own child is running away from him and he is chasing him because he doesn't want his son to go. But the more he chases his son, the more his son will resent him and it will eventually ruin his life. So it is better to let him go so that he discovers his own way in life just as he did. Siddhartha also realizes that life is like this river. Different places of this river looks different. There are waterfalls, there are banks, there are rocks, but it's still the same river. Siddhartha realizes that all his life he had been jumping from one experience to the next, thinking that the new experience will bring him contentment and happiness in life. First, he stayed meditating with the philosophers. Then he did business with Kamaswami. He spent time in a relationship with Kamala. And then he spent this frugal existence with Vasudeva. So Siddhartha realizes that all these experiences in his life came together to create the person he is today. And finally, he is content with his life, and on the banks of that river, he attains enlightenment. Then the story shifts back into Govinda. Govinda is now a senior Buddhist monk, and all the other monks respect him because of his seniority. But Govinda doesn't feel enlightened himself. He feels like the same anxious person he was when he was younger. Govinda hears a rumor that there is a new enlightened person under a tree. So, curious, he walks towards that tree only to find that it's his old friend Siddhartha. Since Govinda stayed with the Buddha, his experiences in life was limited, and because of that his wisdom was limited. But since Siddhartha had so many experiences, his wisdom was greater and it led to him eventually attaining enlightenment. The key message of this novel is you can learn knowledge from other people, but you can never learn wisdom that way. You learn wisdom when you go out into the world and do things and fail, and that experience is what will teach you wisdom. I first read Siddhartha when I was a teenager, almost a decade ago. So back then I was suffering from low self-esteem, which was caused by many of the insecurities I had about myself, which is not uncommon for teenagers. The main insecurity I had was my belief that I was a slow learner. I believed that whatever new skill I was trying to learn, I had to put tremendous amount of effort into it, and I was always behind my peers. In this time period, I suffered from depression and had to go to therapy. So naturally, these well-meaning therapists tried to convince me that I should not worry about these insecurities I had about myself, and instead I should focus on the many strengths I have. It all made sense theoretically. I could understand their reasoning. But I could never get those insecurities out of my mind, and therapy didn't really work out. Fast forward a few years and I was in university. I was still having those learning difficulties, but then things started getting a little bit manageable. This was because at that time period I was learning certain techniques that made learning new information and also retaining them much easier. And also I was dabbling in this ancient Greek philosophy called Stoicism, whose key tenet was that you should stop worrying about the things that you can't control and focus on the things that you can do to make your life better. So things went on like this for a while, and then when I was 26 years old, one morning I woke up and suddenly had this realization, which is similar to what Siddhartha had at the river bank in the end of the book, where I suddenly realized that I should not worry about my insecurities, and instead I should focus on the things I can do to make my life better. So after that point, I started becoming more open about my own shortcomings. But this is not a new information. So this was what my therapist had been saying for the past couple of years. Although I could understand the message back then, the message never internalized in my mind. I think it works like this. You go through life accumulating both experiences and knowledge, and those concepts constantly collide with each other inside your mind, and one day though one of those random collisions will create this moment of epiphany, this moment of realization about something you kind of knew all along but you really didn't understand. There is really no way to fast forward this process. The only thing you can do is keep learning new information and keep having new experiences and hope for the best. Like Steve Jobs once said, in life, you can't really connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So, as I have grown older, I have developed certain criticisms about this novel as well. My first criticism is I think Siddhartha should have stayed with the Buddha for a little bit longer and got some knowledge about his philosophy, because I understand why Siddhartha had to leave and have his own experiences to gain his own knowledge, on his own wisdom, but still I believe that in certain instances you should stay and get the knowledge from someone who knows more than you about a subject. This is the same as going to therapy. A therapist can't give you wisdom, they can only give you knowledge and perspectives on seeing things differently. You have to use those perspectives and knowledge on your own to develop your own wisdom. Sometimes you really don't have to reinvent the wheel when you can learn something from someone who has done it before. This is why we learn philosophy. The next problem I have with this novel is I think Siddhartha was irresponsible towards the people in his life. So in the first instance, he leaves his parents in the beginning of the novel and he never see them again, and they are presumably dead. And in the next instance, as soon as he is dissatisfied with worldly life, he leaves Kamala and his unborn child behind and he just ventures forth. So these themes of abandoning your responsibilities in the seek of enlightenment and spirituality is kind of prevalent in Herman Hesse's other novels as well, and also his personal life. And as I have grown older, I kind of disagree on that part of the message. I think finding your own way is important, but it should be balanced with the responsibilities and duties you have towards your community and the people in your life. So that is my review of the novel Siddhartha. And as I said, this is one of those books that I hold very dear to myself. And each time I read it in different parts of my life, I see some things differently. And I hope that you would also give this book a try. It's an amazing read and could possibly be life changing.